It was a chilly December evening when Jude, the only son of Madame Ego, drove up to his mother's small but cozy apartment in his shiny new car. The streets were lit with colourful holiday lights, and the scent of Christmas filled the air. Jude had just secured a well-paying job in the city and recently purchased his new car. He came home not only to surprise his mother with gifts, but also to proudly show her the car he had just bought. Madame Ego, who had worked tirelessly as a trader to raise her 3 children after their father passed away, was overjoyed. Kefi, the eldest daughter, had recently moved to the UK to join her husband after a beautiful wedding, and Uju, the 3rd child, was working at a bank in another city. Although they couldn't be there in person, they made sure to send gifts to their beloved mother through Jude. Their mother's heart swelled with pride and happiness, seeing how well her children were doing. Madame Ego had always been close to her elder sister, Auntie Nkichi, who never married or had children of her own. Despite not having a family, Auntie Nkichi was always considered part of Madame Ego's family. Whenever Madame Ego's children bought gifts for their mother, they always included something for Auntie Nkichi too. However, this time the gifts Auntie Nkichi received from the children were less than she expected. Madame Ego, always generous, would give extra from her own share to her sister whenever she needed it. Auntie Nkichi would smile and thank her, but inside she felt a pang of jealousy. As the gifts and money from the children to their mother increased, Auntie Nkichi's jealousy grew. She couldn't understand why her own gifts remained the same, or saw only a slight increase, despite the significant rise in what her sister received. Madame Ego, unaware of her sister's growing resentment, continued to share every detail of her children's successes, including how Kefi was processing a visa for her to visit the UK for postpartum care. That night, Auntie Nkichi had a terrible thought. What if she could somehow turn the children's love away from Madame Ego and towards herself? She wanted to be the one to go to the UK, to receive the larger gifts, and to be the centre of their lives. Driven by envy, Auntie Nkichi sought the help of an old woman known for her dark powers. She explained her plan to the witch doctor, who promised to manipulate the children's dreams, making them believe their mother was a witch trying to harm them. The witch doctor also cursed the children's fortunes, ensuring that they would face troubles that would lead them to believe their dreams were real. Auntie Nkichi knew that if she could turn the children against their mother, they would seek her out for comfort and guidance. She would then become the new mother in their eyes, receiving all the love, gifts and care that Madame Ego had. The plan started to take effect. One night, Kefi, now pregnant, had a terrifying dream where she saw her mother trying to eliminate her and her unborn child. The dream was so vivid that it left her shaken. Soon after, she had a miscarriage. Devastated, Kefi stopped calling her mother, convinced that something evil was at play. She confided in Auntie Nkichi, who pretended to be concerned and suggested that a prophet could help her. The prophet, a man secretly paid by Auntie Nkichi, confirmed her worst fears, telling her that her mother had joined the witches in the village and was responsible for her suffering. Kefi, desperate for protection, promised Auntie Nkichi that she would forget about processing her mother's visa and instead focus on bringing Auntie Nkichi to the UK for her postpartum care when the time came. Jude too began having similar dreams. In his dreams, his mother took on various evil forms, trying to harm him. He would wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding in fear. As if to confirm his nightmares, his work began to suffer. His projects failed, and he faced threats of losing his job. Whenever Jude called Auntie Nkichi, she would ask him about his well-being and subtly lead the conversation to his dreams. When he confided in her, she advised him to contact the same prophet who had helped Kefi. The prophet once again confirmed that their mother was a witch. Jude, terrified, decided to cut off all ties with his mother, vowing to only send gifts and money to Auntie Nkechi, whom he now regarded as his true mother. Uju, the third child, also began to have terrifying dreams, where her mother transformed into monstrous animals trying to attack her. Her once stable banking job turned into a nightmare as money began to disappear from her department, and she was blamed. Uju, who had always been level-headed, started to panic. She reached out to her elder brother Jude, who told her about his similar dreams and the prophet's revelations. When she spoke to Auntie Nkechi, she confirmed the same story, adding that Kefi had lost her baby after similar dreams. Uju, overwhelmed with fear and anger, vowed never to speak to her mother again, declaring Auntie Nkechi as her new mother. The three siblings, now estranged from their mother, held a conference call where they discussed their recent nightmares and the disasters in their lives. Kefi told her siblings that she had decided to have Auntie Nkechi come to the UK for her postpartum care. Jude and Uju agreed that their mother was a danger to them and should be avoided at all costs. They decided to block her number and cut off all contact. They also agreed to send all future gifts and money to Auntie Nkechi, who they now saw as their true mother. They even discussed plans for the future, with Uju declaring that when she got married, Auntie Nkechi would be the one to stand in as the mother of the day. Madame Ego, unaware of the dark forces at play, grew increasingly worried as her children stopped answering her calls. She confided in Auntie Nkechi, who feigned ignorance and promised to try and reach them. Madame Ego was heartbroken and confused, especially since the children had promised to send her money to fix things around the house, but had suddenly gone silent. Without her monthly support from the children, Madame Ego's life became more difficult. She had relied on their promise to send money regularly so that she wouldn't have to work as hard. Now she was left with little income and a growing sense of despair. She turned to prayer, asking God to reconnect her with her children. Desperate to hear from her children, Madame Ego borrowed a friend's phone to call her son Jude. But as soon as Jude heard her voice, he cut the call and switched off his phone. She tried calling Kefi in the UK, but Kefi screamed, "Holy Ghost fire," and ended the call. When she finally reached Uju, Uju warned her never to call any of them again, accusing her of being a witch. Madame Ego was shocked and devastated. She couldn't understand why her children would think such a thing. In her sorrow, she turned to Auntie Nkechi, who pretended to be supportive but inwardly gloated. Madame Ego's pain only deepened when Auntie Nkechi gave her a small amount of money, telling her to manage it as times were tough. Unbeknownst to Madame Ego, Kefi had conceived again and was keeping the pregnancy a secret, fearing her mother would cause another miscarriage. She confided in Auntie Nkechi, who assured her that she was praying for her and that everything would be fine. Kefi sent more money to Auntie Nkechi, both for the prophet's prayers and for her personal use, ignoring her mother. Madame Ego continued to pray for her children, begging God to reveal the truth. She felt dejected, her health began to decline, and she became the subject of gossip in the village. Some people mocked her, calling her a witch, while others pitied her for her lonely plight. Overwhelmed by the pain and confusion, Madame Ego decided to intensify her prayers. She spent several nights praying fervently, crying out to God to restore her relationship with her children. One night, in the midst of her groaning and deep prayer, she had a dream. In the dream, an old man wearing a white garment with a shining face appeared to her. He gently told her, "Weep not, I have heard your prayers." When Madame Ego woke up, she was filled with joy and hope, knowing that her prayers had been answered. Finally, Kefi gave birth, and began the process of securing Auntie Nkechi's visa to come to the UK. However, on the day Auntie Nkechi was to leave for the airport, she was involved in a severe car accident. She was rushed to the hospital, where she fell into a coma. When the children heard about the accident, they immediately accused their mother of causing it with her witchcraft. Their anger and hatred for their mother grew even more intense. Madame Ego had no idea that her daughter had given birth, or that Auntie Nkechi was travelling to the UK. When she received a call informing her that her sister had been in an accident, she was both confused and concerned. She couldn't understand why her sister would travel without informing her, especially since they had spoken just 2 days prior. Worried, Madame Ego hurried to the hospital to be by her sister's side. Upon arriving at the hospital, Madame Ego found Auntie Nkechi in a coma. She sat by her sister's bedside, praying for her recovery, still unaware of the full extent of the situation. Shortly after, Jude and Uju arrived at the hospital. The moment they saw their mother, their faces contorted with anger and resentment. In the hospital room, Jude and Uju confronted Madame Ego with accusations. Their voices were filled with fury as they blamed her for the accident, convinced that she had used witchcraft to harm Auntie Nkechi. They called her a murderer and demanded that she leave. Madame Ego was devastated by their words. She tried to explain herself, but they refused to listen. As the tension in the room reached its peak, a miraculous event occurred. Auntie Nkechi, who had been lying unconscious, began to stir. Slowly she opened her eyes, and the medical staff quickly rushed in to attend to her. The family was asked to step outside to allow the doctors to work. Hours later, the family was allowed back into the room. Auntie Nkechi, now conscious but weak, motioned for Madame Ego and the children to come closer. With tears in her eyes, she began to speak, her voice filled with remorse. "Forgive me," she whispered. "I have done terrible things." The room fell silent as she confessed to orchestrating the entire scheme. She admitted to her jealousy of Madame Ego, her consultations with the witch doctor, and manipulating the children's dreams. She revealed how she paid a fake prophet to confirm their fears, and how she planned to usurp her sister's place in their lives. The children stood in shock, their faces pale as the realization of their actions dawned on them. Madame Ego wept silently, both hurt by the betrayal and relieved that the truth had finally come to light. Auntie Nkechi, tears streaming down her face, reached out to her sister. "Ego, can you ever forgive me? My envy blinded me, and I destroyed our family." Madame Ego, her heart heavy, took her sister's hand. "I forgive you, Sister Nkechi, but it's God you must seek forgiveness from now." Turning to her children, she saw the guilt and shame in their eyes. They fell to their knees, pleading for her forgiveness. "Mother, we were wrong," Jude began. "We allowed ourselves to be deceived and treated you horribly." "We are so sorry," Uju added, sobbing. "Can you ever forgive us?" Madame Ego embraced her children, her tears mingling with theirs. "My children, I have always loved you and will always forgive you. Let's put this behind us and move forward together." Despite the emotional reconciliation, Auntie Nkechi's injuries were severe. She suffered from internal bleeding that the doctors struggled to control. Realizing her time was limited, she used her remaining strength to bless her sister and the children, praying for their happiness and unity. A few hours later, Auntie Nkechi passed away peacefully, surrounded by family. Her death served as a solemn reminder of the consequences of envy and deceit. The family mourned her loss, but they also found closure in her confession and their reconciliation. In the weeks that followed, the family focused on healing. The children worked diligently to mend their relationship with their mother, showering her with love and attention. They renovated her house, turning it into a beautiful home filled with laughter and joy once again. The dark cloud that had hung over the family was finally lifting, replaced by a renewed sense of togetherness. Kefi resumed the visa process for her mother. Despite the painful memories, she was determined to have her mother come to the UK to meet her grandchild and spend quality time together. The family also held a small ceremony in the village to honour Auntie Nkechi's memory and to acknowledge the lessons they had learned. Finally, the day arrived when Madame Ego's visa was approved. With excitement and a heart full of gratitude, she boarded the plane to the UK. Upon arrival, she was greeted by Kefi, her son-in-law, and her adorable grandchild. Tears of joy flowed as she held her grandchild for the first time. The family spent precious moments together, creating new memories and strengthening their bonds. The family had faced darkness, but emerged stronger and more united. They learned the dangers of envy, the importance of trust, and the power of forgiveness. They also understood the need to be discerning, not allowing false prophets or deceitful individuals to sway their beliefs. Madame Ego's story became a testament to the enduring strength of a mother's love and the resilience of family bonds. The community, having witnessed the events unfold, took the lessons to heart, fostering a spirit of unity and love. The family continued to cherish each other, knowing that they had overcome great trials together. They moved forward with a renewed commitment to stay close, to communicate openly, and to always support one another in the face of any challenges. Moral lesson: we must be vigilant and guard against envy, as it can lead to destructive actions that harm both ourselves and those we love. Always trust in the love of your family and be discerning in your relationships, as deception can come from those closest to us. Forgiveness is powerful and essential for healing, but it's also important to be prayerful and seek divine protection. Finally, be aware of fake prophets. I also pray that another person will not replace you on the day of your joy, as Auntie Nkechi tried to replace her sister, Madame Ego, by attempting to take her place in the UK during Kefi's postpartum care. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones. We'd love to hear from you, so please comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Stay tuned for more interesting stories in the future. God bless you, and see you next.